Hey friends, welcome to another episode of Sketchy Ideas, the Point Counterpoint live video podcast where we debate concepts surrounding leadership, business, personal achievement, a whole bunch of other stuff, even some movie trivia thrown in there, and try to make you think twice before implementing that new idea you just discovered on the internet. I'm Brad James.
And I'm Michael Rampola.
And we're your hosts. And today's topic is really, really cool, and we're going to dive into more. But before we do, we just want to give some credit to some of our sponsors. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Michael.
I want to give thanks to Spirity, Overcome Your Obstacles. Thanks for sponsoring the show.
And the other sponsor is Cream City Marketing, where we help small and medium-sized businesses put together cohesive marketing strategies and implement them. All right. So now that we've said thank you to our sponsors, hey, today's episode is really cool because we're going to be covering some training stuff that Michael has been diving into a little bit, and we've been discussing on how to best implement this. But before I steal his thunder, I'm going to hand it back over to him.
Thanks, Brad. So what we want to remind everybody as we get into this episode is how we got here. So if you remember back a couple of weeks, a question was on the floor from our engaged audience that said, how do we deal with the generations at work? Kind of a classic question, but that person specifically brought up learning and training for those darn millennials. And what we explored in that episode was understanding that each generation has its own values, its own perspective, and all together, when we leverage all of them together, we get the best picture and the best insight and the best leverage forward in our business. That was part one. Part two was, okay, but sometimes they don't know those darn millennials. So how do we train them? How do we train those darn millennials? And we said, well, sometimes it's not about training. So last week we explored all the other things that it could be that aren't even yet training, that we could do some easy implementations, easy interventions that could have a significant impact on performance at work. And we said it is sometimes true that it's training, and that's how we got to today, because as we all know, basically all training these days has gone virtual. So if virtual training is the thing and the millennials are up for it and everybody else is down on it, does that work? Yeah. Then how do we make the most of it? Are you up for it? Are you down on it?
It's opposite day. So remember,
it's opposite day.
You know, like
I'm
up is down, down is up, left
up
is
against
right, right
it,
is left.
and I'm down on it. Regardless, how do we make the most of this virtual training, this COVID world that we're in? And I was excited about this because I've been exploring this for quite some time, and I know Brad has also. So, Brad, what are some of the questions that you've had in this space from your experience?
So I guess the thing, and we talked about this a little bit, is that training is not a one-size-fits-all thing for most of the clients that we work with. When we go in and we talk about like inter-advertising or invertising, or we talk about internal training or corporate training, or even helping people build out training to hand over to their clients or customers, all of this stuff, the topics of discussion come up there's 100 different ways to display and share that information and that knowledge, right? Because based on what we talked about is that it comes down to how do I package the knowledge in the right way for the person who's viewing it. And so we get questions on like, hey, should this be an LMS? Should this be a podcast? Should this be a whole bunch of reading? Should we write a book? Should we put together a training manual? Should it be workshops? Should it be webinars? Should it be an LMS with courses and certification? Should it be live? Should we invite people in? Should we do hands-on? Like, you can see how this can go on and on and on and on and on. And the further you go down that rabbit hole, you're like, I always go back to, and we've talked about it, who's your avatar?
Right.
But as we've discussed, companies right now have avatars who are all the way up into their 70s and all the way into their 20s and their teens. And so when we begin to dive into this, it's how do all of those people learn? And some of that you can classify and some of it you can't.
Yeah, so right.
It's like people spinning down the toilet, and then I think they go, hands off, I'm not touching it, we're just not going to do it. And then they continue to have the same problem, or the cost of it's so big that they're like, well, we just got to figure out what it's going to be prioritized for.
Yep.
And I don't think either of those work or are the best answer. I mean, I don't know about you on how you build this, but I know you're going to share with us. There's a whole bunch of ways that people can do this.
Exactly. Exactly. And you bring up an interesting idea here about the internal avatar, aka your employees, right?
Yes.
How are people? And I think just as a quick sidebar, that is an often overlooked angle on internal comms, right? Internal communications, internal training. We do one size fits all, or as many of our old, our classic and very solid teachers and professors might have done. I'm going to teach you the way that I learn because I don't know any other way.
Right.
So I'm going to communicate with my team. I'm going to do training for my internal team based on the way that I think and based on the way that I learn and the way I understand things, as opposed to following our Covey/law of leadership, which says seek first to understand, then be understood. If I don't understand my internal avatars, the people I'm trying to learn, teach, and how they learn best, anything I design for them, whether it's from our last conversation, training, expectations setting, job realignment, if I don't understand them before I start to put in these interventions, then it's a pretty good chance I'm going to miss the mark.
Right. Hey, and just an asterisk on that seek first to understand. We had a debate, and we actually used the Google machine to go out and find out. It's habit number 5 in Stephen Covey's, and it's illustrated in a whole bunch of laws in the 21 irrefutable laws of leadership. So just to clarify for those of you who might have been like, Brad doesn't know what he's talking about, it is habit number 5. I was incorrect. I'm going to own it. Shame, shame. I understand.
I'll let you own the asterisk. All right, so I'm just going to leave it there. So folks, let me do a really quick teach with a story here. So when we all got into this new reality back in March, April time, I think it was probably right around the turn of March to April. We've been in this for a couple of weeks, and I'll be honest, I know I'm an exception. I was feeling very comfortable. Things felt actually very familiar to me, and I was pretty quick on the front edge of leveraging the virtual tools to get work done. And I was honestly surprised because I had not followed, principle number 5. I had not figured out why everybody else was struggling, but I noticed that everybody else wasn't picking it up as quickly as I had. So I took a little moment of self-reflection, and I realized I'd been doing this for a decade already. I was 10 years ahead of the game. Back in 2010, when I was internal at Manpower Group, I had to take a 3.5-day live training program, which was one of those signature courses where everybody gets to come to headquarters for that one time in your management career. Everybody gets to go guaranteed. It was an amazing experience. And I had to take that thing and make it virtual. And that was in an environment which at the time, everything that was virtual just meant a bad webinar where somebody reads PowerPoint slides to you. If you've ever been on that bad webinar, you understand what I'm talking about. And I had to say, we're going to do virtual training. And people said, you mean webinars? It was, no, not webinars. Virtual training, because they're not the same thing. And so if you've been on bad Zooms, you weren't around the world of the bad virtual webinar. If you've been on bad Zooms, you understand the same idea. If you've ever been in a meeting that could have been a memo, you understand this idea. So all of this really goes back to who are we trying to teach? What are we trying to teach them? And what is the best way to deliver that message? And sometimes virtual is the best way. And that's what I figured out when I had to convert that live 3.5-day event into, and here, get this, 30 one-hour modules. We did it 6 weeks straight, 5 days a week, 1 hour every morning. And because we were covering 2 time zones or 2 coasts, the whole country, I actually did the same show twice every morning. 7 a.m. Eastern Central Time, 9 a.m. covered Mountain and Pacific. So I did the same show twice every day for 6 weeks. Well, not every day, but so 30 modules is how this thing broke down. And through the first one and on to the second one, we did this for many iterations. The biggest thing I learned is that there are some things about a virtual delivery model that make it even better than live. And once you leverage that and stop apologizing for, I'm sorry we have to do this on Zoom. Everybody who ever says, I'm sorry we have to do this on Zoom, is just like the keynote speaker who gets up and says, gosh, I'm really nervous. I hope this goes well. And you just lost your audience, right?
Everybody just shuts down.
Like, oh.
It's a show. Hey, before we even dive into this, remember, like for any of you who are trying to figure this out, the best thing you can do is to try and make it as entertaining as possible while being informative, right? Just in general, like.
100% right. Because, as you just learned from me, stories teach. Entertainment teaches. We learn from stories. We learn from experiences that are unique and different and unexpected. And that is some of the things that you can create in virtual space. Not you can't do them live. Of course you can. And live, when I say live, I mean face-to-face. Virtually delivered live training can introduce some things that you couldn't do. I don't know if anybody's seen the invite a goat to your Zoom call thing, right? I couldn't do that live. I couldn't bring a goat into a classroom, especially to a corporate building. But I can have a goat show up in one of the squares of my Zoom room. Well, I could. I'm sure somebody's tried. I could, right?
I mean,
but there's
we do
unique experiences.
Bees.
You do. Oh, there you go.
With bees.
Of course you do it with bees.
I mean,
of course you do.
Yeah, I mean, bees. We let the bees teach. We use the bees. We put a camera on them.
Bring the bees into the room. Just let them listen. Say, all right,
viewer.
No,
no, they're in.
Let's take the lid off this thing.
We put them in a bee viewer and we show them how it works, and we put a camera on it so they can see what's going on. But yeah, I mean, that's just general like teaching methods, right? So let's save that for another one.
Time out. There, fallacy. There you go. That's just, anytime that's just, right? We got to put a pause on it. It's not, because we make all these assumptions about what we can and can't do because we're virtual now, because we can't get face-to-face. That means we can't X, Y, and Z. Sometimes that's true and accurate, and sometimes that's just an assumption. Same thing goes back to those darn millennials. Well, they need everything virtual, or well, they got to have it on demand. Okay, guess what? So do you. If you watch YouTube to learn stuff, you got to have it on demand too. But your perception is that that's not how I learn. And you know what? 9 times out of 10, you do learn the same way. Because as adults, adult learning theory has a couple core tenets. One of which is adults learn from problem-based thinking, meaning I have a problem, I need a solution, I'm going to learn about it. If I can't introduce a problem around the training that this training will solve, you lose most of your adult audience. That's key.
That makes sense. Okay.
And therefore, the things I learn need to be applicable and useful in my day-to-day world. If they're just theoretical, most adults, Brad, and you and I are obviously exceptions, most adults don't learn much from theoretical. They learn a lot from practical. And can I use this and where can I apply it?
Right. And that's like problem-based learning, right? That's now how schools are beginning to teach, which is great. But we now as adults and experienced adults understand that. But do you still believe that adults really think that way in a corporate setting or a job setting, or do they receive information and then are told to go apply it?
So how it's done and how it should be done, I think there's still gaps. I guess if I'm picking up on your question. So there are still, I mean, I could give you the exact same content and frame it 2 different ways. And one of those 2 methods is going to resonate more strongly. I can give you the theory and the practice on one hand, or I can say, bring me your problems and let's solve them together. And I might give you the exact same training content to address both of those situations, but the way you receive it, learn it, and what you can actually do with it after are going to be vastly different.
Okay, so if we're talking about virtual training, then if you're speaking specifically around delivery of the same information through a virtual,
I guess that's good. Let's clarify that.
Platform.
So what makes it virtual? So what could make it, these are not exclusive choices. One thing could be a delivery method, like not in a face-to-face classroom. That is one way to think about virtual, right? Okay. Another way to think about virtual is in this idea called asynchronous, aka on demand, right? If I need everybody in the same place at the same time as the presenter, that's synchronous learning, classrooms, standard presentations. But if I record it and make it available, YouTube, that is asynchronous or on demand. I can pull it up when I need it. Another thing that sometimes makes virtual is something called micro learning, which means I take the big thing, the thing that used to be a day-long training, and I break it up into a bunch of tiny little pieces, each of which is a self-contained mini lesson. Again, I keep going back to YouTube because it's a great tool for this, right? I need to learn how to do something in Photoshop's an easy one, right? I'm not going to learn all the Photoshop tools at once. I'm going to learn how to put the drop shadow behind my font in a particular way. It takes me 2 minutes to learn and I move on.
Right. Yep.
So micro learning. So what makes a virtual delivery method, whether it's asynchronous or synchronous, whether it's micro learning. And I guess just the other thing is just sometimes the tech and the media. Sometimes just the fact that I'm introducing technology and multimedia into my training pushes me into a virtual training or virtual learning space.
Right. Okay. But if we're talking about all of those being the delivery methods, that still doesn't necessarily help you understand how to deliver it in those, we'll call it motifs, or in those delivery methods. So what I am Brad. I teach my student sales in person using a whiteboard. We run this course. We run it like every week. We're doing skill building every week, and I'm trying to make this on demand. And so I train it, and then 3 weeks from now, people forget it. Like, how are all of these things? No, I'm just saying, like, that's just normal habits, right? People get distracted, they move on. They either enacted it and applied it, or they didn't. And if they didn't, it tends to go away. If they applied it and they had success, they continue to dive into it more, right? That's just human nature. But we see all the time, like, these training consultants or these consultants come in, they build education, they build curriculum that's custom to an event. And all of a sudden they begin to train, they make it through, they're there for 2 weeks, they leave, they do their follow-up call like a month later to see how things are going. And basically everything that they've trained is now like gone. Got it.
Yep. Okay. So I think it goes back to, in a sense, what you brought up with the show. And so what I'm going to say is this. Oftentimes, training is about content and delivery. We think about content and delivery as what makes training.
Right.
The flip of that is outcomes and applications. It's not about what happens in the classroom, corporate training, conference room, even what happens in the Zoom room. It's actually training, when done right, is not about training.
Right. It's not about getting the certificate or showing up. It's about what are people going to do with it.
Right. Which, see, sales, right? Sales is not about features and benefits. It's about outcomes and impacts. What will this do for you? So if I say, well, my sales training is about this 3-day curriculum and the workbook and the thing, and that's all about the content and delivery. But back to our performance analysis, what is the training supposed to accomplish? Outcomes, applications. And then we ask the question, is training the right way to get that done? So I know I keep shooting holes in training as a solution, but if training isn't the solution, don't spend your money there. Your money, your time, your investment, don't put your eggs in that basket if that basket has holes in it.
Now, all right. So training, we're classifying training though as this big, structured elephant in the room, right? But the way you're classifying training is, or the way most people classify training, right? Because you just talked about on-demand 2-minute snippet, right? On YouTube of how do you drop a drop shadow on an image when you're dealing with Photoshop, right? That is still technically training. But it is not necessarily training in the standpoint of building out a giant curriculum, right? And in fact, if we look back at some of the tools and things that you talked about knowledge, skills, all that other stuff, that's like skill building on a micro level, right? So maybe it would be helpful to define what exactly we're classifying training is in this case.
Great. That's good. Let's do that. So in this case, we're primarily describing training as designed learning to achieve an outcome. How about that? Okay. Training means learning that's designed. It means it's from an instructional design standpoint. I'm designing an instructional intervention, an instructional event content to achieve some different outcome. When we think about learning objectives, by the end of this training, participants will be able to, will understand how, and will achieve like that. That's outcome based. So it has to have some sort of reason for being or end in mind. When we add the virtual on that, and I guess I'm also, as I'm starting to build out this list, I'm lumping other things in under virtual. Let's say non-traditional.
Right.
Because I'm starting to think about informal and on the job as a training methodology.
Well, and that goes back to your steps of getting to this quote unquote training as we're classifying it, right?
Right.
Like if you write out, remind me, refresh my mind, what are the 4 areas that we get to before we even get to quote unquote training?
Sure.
One was what?
First one was basically clear expectations. Does everybody on the job, well, what are you expecting them to do, and would they have the right answer if I asked them?
Okay, so clear expectation is one.
What is the expected outcome, and do people know what it is? Number 2 is the quick fixes, which is there some obstacle in the way? Is it a lack of understanding of clear expectations? Is it some missing resource? Is there some quick fix that if we could solve that problem would actually get the thing to go?
Okay, and 3?
Number 3 was starting to explore. Oh my gosh, I'm blanking. Well, let's just go to the next thing that's most important, which is the can't, won't, don't know how. What's the source of the gap? Oh, there was a leave it alone. That somewhere, maybe it was number 3 or number 2. What's the cost of leaving it alone, and is it worth solving? That's somewhere in the top 3. But number 4 is what's the actual source? Is it a can't, a won't, or don't know how? Why aren't the people doing what they're supposed to be doing?
Yep.
And if it's the don't know how, that's a knowledge gap, and that's where training can help. But training can't solve motivation issues, and training can't solve misaligned roles and abilities.
All right. So I know I'm gonna adjust my camera here since I know we're running on 3 today. So I just want everybody to take a quick look at this to make sure that you understand, like 5 is training, right? 5 leads to training if there's a don't. Okay. Yep. So, but the thing with this is that even though we're classifying 5 as like, that's training, 5 is really, when we're looking at it, you have to look at 5 as being like your overhaul training, right? This is we are going to take a giant swing at this. This is your home run hitting, clear expectations, quick fixes. This is like your on-demand stuff that you're doing on the job, right? This is experiential. This is leave it alone is like, that's also falls into it. Then your source, well, that's different. But Michael's not saying that you don't do these things. It's not that you're not guiding people to information, right? If you have information, it just might not be structured. To me, when you talk about training in the way we're doing it, virtual or not, this is structured onboarding. This is like, hey, we're going to introduce you to SOPs or poop sheets or scope of works or all of this stuff and how that all works. This is the core backbone of your workflow.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And the reason
anytime expectations or functions change, which means new hires, all the onboarding work you talked about, I introduce a new process or a new role. So if the work that I am doing and how I do it changes, then training must be included because things are new and different. Yeah. And it's not even, I guess I'm struggling right now as we discuss this, Michael, and I know that as people work through this, the challenge for you as a small business owner, right? If you're a company of one or a company of like that's leveraging a whole bunch of outsourcing to independent contractors, you're going to want some sort of training in place based on your process. Absolutely.
Right. And so getting to this point, I guess is where I'm trying to go. It's not that difficult. This is observation and documentation. That's all it is from the beginning. Right. I mean, I have built backbones of companies based on, hey, every week, everybody is required to come with one documented process. And it all gets dropped into a Google Drive folder or way back when, before Google Drive was the way it was. It all got brought to the table and it got put into a book, a binder. Yep. And we'll run it on the copier and everybody will get one. Yep. Yeah. Like, and I guess I feel very passionate about this because everybody thinks, hey, this is way overwhelming. This is impossible. Well, it's overwhelming if you approach it like I have to have this giant thing done and it's got to be perfect and it's got to be like everybody's going to get it right the first time. No, every training document, every training, whether it's virtual or not, should be a living, breathing thing that adjusts and evolves every time you go through it. And yeah, you might say, I don't have time to do that. Well, then don't do it. But you got to get to a baseline. Otherwise, you can't grow your company or your organization or your event or whatever it is. And the thing is, is as you move from company to company to company to company, if you carry that with you, you now have experience. And now you become the expert that can shortcut things because you're coming with, hey, no, here's the playbook. So,
Yes.
so a rule of thumb that we are working on implementing now within Cream City Marketing is every week, the people who I work with directly, I'm asking them to think through process. Spend at least 10% of your time building out, documenting process.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what that means is that as we're doing this, you really got to look at it from the standpoint of, how do we make this work?
Yep. You know, and you're reminding me, and to your point about the iterative approach, right? There's a great school of thought. Kirkpatrick, I can't remember the guy's first name, is the founder. So I just look up Kirkpatrick models or Kirkpatrick levels of training. And there's 4 levels of training evaluation to see whether or not the training is effective. And
Right.
level one is the survey you fill out as you finish the training event, which is, did you have fun? Did you enjoy it? Did you learn stuff? Cool, great, wonderful. Level 2 is some sort of follow on a short time later that says, what do you still remember and are you using it? Right. Levels 3 and 4 get to like long-term application. Is this being applied now? Is this changing the way you work? And that typically gets out into the 90 to 180 day timeline. And then you try and go out even farther than that and say, have we seen tangible business results from and direct result of this learning, this training experience? So right. Therefore, any training, whether it's job aid documents, onboarding, or formal training events, should be evaluating whether or not it's achieving its outcomes. And if not, it should be adjusted. Now, here's where often training falls flat. And I've worked with large organizations that I say, well, what's the intended outcome of this training? What business results are you hoping to achieve? And they don't have an answer. Which of course makes me wonder why we're doing it. And the answer is that it's swatty, quite frankly, right? Well, we knew we needed a manager development program, so we created one. Great. What's it designed to do? Have a manager development training program? Like it's designed it's designed to meet its own needs. It's the snake eating its own tail. Instead of, well, what's the business impact of this training? What's its intended or potential business impact? So if you don't have a baseline measurement of how things were before you started the training, back to our performance analysis that Brad outlined, if you don't know how things are and how you want them to be different, you will have no idea, first of all, whether or not training is needed. And second of all, if you've identified you're doing training anyway, which is cool, I have no problem with that. Do you have something that you're saying, well, this is what we hope to see different as a result? And you got to check your current state before you figure out if you're going to have an impact in the future, and then we adjust accordingly. Now, all this is to say, even though we just said, here's how to think about training, this reverse engineers us back to say maybe training isn't the right answer. If you were doing training, even if it was achieving an outcome, it was getting good results, and that training methodology got put on pause, right? It was a live event. Now it's not happening. I'm going to have you go back to the original question in good problem analysis, go back to the original root, which is, what was this training accomplishing? Now, what are the other ways we could accomplish those same goals? And that important question is the kind of a question that I always encourage you to seek some outside support with, because figuring out outside of the institutional, just we love this thing, what is it actually getting done for us? And then having somebody say, here's some other ways you could get that same goal accomplished. Some of it might be training, some of it might be something else. And converting your thinking from, back to my original premise, which is we used to have everybody in a room and we showed them a PowerPoint, and now we do a bad webinar where I read you the slides, right? That's not meeting any of the original goals anymore. That's converting live training to bad webinar. If you used to do a live event and you just put it on Zoom and you put in zero additional thought, and we've all either run that event or been on that event so far in these last 9 months, am I right? If you've either engineered or participated in the let's just do it online version, you understand what I'm saying, which is if you don't put some good thought into its intended outcomes and reevaluate all the different other ways to get there, then you're not necessarily, I'm going to guess, your likelihood of meeting those needs is as good as a dice roll.
Correct. Yeah. Hey man, we've been diving into this. I think, all right. So I was notified we had some technical difficulties. So I think
I love that.
we're going to have to come back to this. For those of you who don't know, it's
darn.
snowy,
what
rainy,
a shame.
stormy weather here in Milwaukee.
Yeah.
We're going to have to come back and talk about this again. But I really think that if you're struggling with figuring this piece out, right? This is where if you're like, I look at business people, you typically fall in like one of two big areas. You're either like the sales and marketing person, or you're like the ops person most of the time. And you feel comfortable in either of those, one of those two positions, more or less, right? If you're a solopreneur, you're doing all of it, but more or less you feel best doing one or the other. One of them gives you a ton of energy and the other one doesn't. Now there's subsegments in there that don't, but the premise is neither of these talk about documenting process. So this is something where if you can have somebody help you put this together, take some time, figure that out. Often with your process stuff, it's best to have somebody like observe, ask you questions, dive into it. You guys saw us do that when we were talking about sales process and sales funnels a couple months ago. We talk about it as we go through even this, like how to build it out, what's important. Having somebody to bounce that stuff off of is extremely important. And there are people out there who know how to do it. You just got to find the right person. Like, so this guy right here definitely knows how to do it. Okay. But you can find other people out there, technical writers who have done this before. The challenge is in a new age of business where people are going to be working remotely and they can't just come over and ask you a question and they can't pick up the phone and get a hold of you because you might be in a meeting. This is going to become extremely critical in the next 12 to 18 months, whether you like it or not.
Yep.
The employment and working as a team is shifting so much that you have to have process documented, because you can't just get in a room together and outline it, and they can't just come over to your desk and look at your computer and you show them this stuff, because you guys aren't working in the same place anymore most of the time. And if you are, you're fortunate, but that's sparse. It's realistically used to be 5 days a week. Maybe now it's like 1 or 2 days.
Right.
And even then you're worried about a whole bunch of slew of other things. But my point is, take some time, ponder this. I know I've got some resources that I'm going to put together. We'll put them on the website. Nice. I'm sure Michael's got some too that will aggregate, and then you'll be able to download at some point. So stay tuned, because we're going to have to republish this episode, I'm sure. And then when we do that, we'll drop in a link and you can go there, download the resources, and we will probably dive into this a little more a little later on. Sound good?
Cool. Works for me.
All right. Hey, so with that, I think we're going to call it quits for today.
We can do that.
But just because I think this was good, and it got my gears thinking a lot. And I think there are things as we talked through this, Michael, you and I were like, we didn't talk about that in the pre-show. We kind of went down the rabbit hole.
Weird. We never do that. Yeah, no.
Oh, no, never. So just remember, so you just learned all about virtual training, how we overcome obstacles, how we dive into it, how we begin to format what it means to be training. And we're going to begin diving in and asking some questions of some other people throughout the next couple of weeks and implementing more of this, so that in Q1 of 2021, you got some process roadmaps so you can actually scale. Those process roadmaps are going to be sales, marketing, that type of stuff, as well as ops. So like fulfillment, packaging, service stuff, all that good stuff. And if you have questions specifically about this, please, please, please send us your questions at info@sketchyideashow.com. And one of us, either Michael or I, or our producer, the voice of God, will get back to you with some answers. And come back next week live. And next week, we're going to do our best to make sure we don't have any technical difficulties. 1:30 every Wednesday. But before we leave you, I want to give another shout out to our sponsors this week. So with that, Michael, you're up.
You got it. Spirity, overcome your obstacles. If you are a business owner looking to grow and scale your business, or an HR leader looking to grow and scale your talent, you know that there are things that get in the way, and sometimes you don't even know what they are. You just know that you're working harder than you should be and not getting the returns. Enlisting the outside help of somebody who can come in and look at things from a different perspective, help you identify the obstacles and get them out of your way, that person can help you accelerate your growth and achieve a greater success. Reach out to Spirity. That's what we do with our clients and our members every day.
And I would highly recommend, if you're having trouble with clarity and expectations, Michael's your guy.
Thanks, bud.
Our other sponsor is Cream City Marketing. We do work with a lot of small, medium-sized businesses to build out marketing strategies, both digital, traditional, help you implement them through leveraging our suite of tools or helping connect you with the right service providers or tools in order for you to make that happen for your business. Because at the end of the day, here's the deal. We're still in a storm. We want you to grow. We want you to scale because right now there's a ton of opportunity. The stats still show that a whole bunch of companies aren't marketing. They're actually dormant right now. Now's the time to invest in working on your business and working on systems to automate business models, cash flow, et cetera. Get in touch with us. You can ping us at info@creamcitymarketing.com and somebody will get back to you right away, or go to creamcitymarketing.com and just sign up on our form there and we will get back to you. All right. Now, with that, we're going to say goodbye. I am Brad James.
And I'm Michael Rampolla.
And just remember, just because it is a sketchy idea doesn't mean it's not worth exploring. So with that, we'll see you next week. Take care. Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.